Hello everybody, welcome back to American Textbook Reading. I'm Brian Stuart, and in this lesson, we're taking a look at Science Book 3, Lesson 10. Wow, Lesson 10 already. We're moving fast. So, in this lesson, you will discover how Earth's orbit makes seasons, and also how shadows change during the day. So, interesting lesson ahead. As always, let's start with the vocabulary. Our first word is axis. Axis is an interesting word. An axis is a line around which something turns. Now here we have an interesting picture. It looks a little complicated, right? But it's an important picture, and it's an important idea to think about, because when we think about the Earth, right, we have the north and the south. On the north is on the top and south is on the bottom. But it's not exactly top and bottom. It's a little bit like this. And that line is not a straight line up and down. It's kind of a diagonal line, and that is the axis. Now the Earth turns around that axis. The Earth doesn't turn around a line that's straight up and down. The Earth turns around a line that is tilted a little bit, and we'll look at tilt in a little bit, but it's not straight up and down, it's on its side just a little bit, and the Earth turns like this. So axis, a line around which something turns, okay? So if you have a top, if you have a spinning toy, right, and you spin it, the axis is straight up and down, but after that toy loses energy, it begins to do this, and the axis moves. It's not straight up and down anymore. It moves from side to side. That is the axis. Okay, good. Next. Tilt. What I just talked about, right? The line, if you spin that toy, right, and it's spinning at the beginning, there's no tilt. It's straight up and down. But like I said, as it loses energy, it begins to move like this, and it tilts from side to side. Now, the Earth doesn't do that very quickly, right? The Earth isn't losing energy as fast as your top. Whew, thank goodness, okay? But the Earth doesn't spin straight up and down. It is at a tilt. Tilt means to cause something to be in a sloping position. Sloping position, we can also say diagonal. Diagonal, right? This would be a straight line up and down. This is a diagonal line. So if something moves around on an axis that's at, and it's not a straight up and down line, it's tilting a little bit, okay? And the Earth does this. That's a very important thing to know and to remember. Okay, tilt. Orbit. Now another thing that's going on independent of the rotation of the Earth is that the Earth is moving around the sun. For a long time, people thought the sun moved around the Earth, but no, it doesn't happen that way. The sun stays put. Well, the sun moves. Everything is moving. But in our solar system, if you just look at the solar system, the sun is stationary. It doesn't move, and the planets orbit around the sun. So orbit is to move around something in a continuous curving path. It might not be a perfect circle. In fact, some planets they're not in a perfect circle. They're a little bit long or short in some parts, depending on which part of the circle you're looking at. We call that an oval, right? But if something moves around something, right, we call that an orbit. And the Earth is orbiting the sun. The moon is orbiting the Earth. Right? And all the other planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all of them are orbiting the sun. Okay? So to orbit, to move around something in a continuous curving path. Rotate. So the Earth is doing really two main motions, right? The Earth is moving in an orbit, but at the same time, it's also turning on its axis. So there are two important motions to think about here, right? The Earth is moving this way, but as it moves, it's also spinning, right? That's interesting, okay? So that spinning motion, we say it is rotating. So to turn with a circular movement. And why is that important? Let's talk about that. Because if the Earth didn't rotate, we wouldn't have sunrises, right? So the Earth is moving like this as it goes around the sun, and because it's rotating very fast relative to the speed at which it goes around the sun, different parts of the earth are shown to the sun at different times. And it takes 24 hours to fully rotate, to spin around once. And because of that, our day is 24 hours long, right? And the start of the day is sunrise. When the earth turns, and you live in this part of the earth turns, the sun seems to rise. The sun doesn't rise, right? As I said, the sun doesn't move. But we are on earth. We don't know we're moving, right? Because we were born this way. We're just used to the motion. We don't think of it as we're moving, right? Right now, you're probably sitting at your desk watching this on your computer screen or maybe on your cell phone. But you feel, I'm not moving. Yes, you are. We're all moving very quickly. We're moving like this. We're also moving like this, okay? So it looks like the sun is coming up over the edge of the land. It's not really coming up. It's just because the earth is turning that we call it sunrise. So the sun seems to rise in the morning. The time in the morning when you first see the sun, we call that sunrise. And we have a video of that. And as you can see, it's morning. You can't tell, is it morning or is it evening? Well, if you just wait a little bit, right, you can see, there's the sun. It's coming up. We see it gradually coming up over the mountains. Now, it's not very quick. I mean, it seems kind of quick, sure, but thankfully the day isn't, really fast, okay? And we have a lot of hours to enjoy the sunlight and to do the things we need to do during the day. But the sun seems to come up over the mountains. Oh, we can also call this the horizon. Horizon. So the horizon is the edge of our sight, right? And in this case, it's very easy. It's the mountains. But if it's flat, right, if there are no mountains, the horizon would be down here, right? Okay, good. What is the opposite of sunrise? Of course, that is sunset. The sun seems to fall down and disappear over the horizon. This is the horizon here, right? The edge of the land, or the sea in this case, the edge of the water. Sunset is the time in the evening when you last see the sun. Bye-bye, sun. We'll see you in the morning. Okay? So when you last see the sun, that is the sunset. Okay, those are the words for vocabulary today. Okay, let's take a look at a main idea of this passage. And we're talking about the Earth's motion around the sun and how it causes the different seasons. Here we have the different seasons. We have spring, we have summer, we have fall, and we have winter. Have you ever wondered why there are different seasons? Well, the seasons are caused by the Earth's rotation. Remember, there are two main, they're not caused by the Earth's rotation, by the Earth's movement. And there are two main movements of the Earth around the sun. So first, Earth always rotates in the same direction, right? It always goes around in this circular motion, right? It doesn't suddenly stop and go back. That would be crazy, right? Besides, how would it do that? Where would it get the energy to do that? Right? When the solar system was formed, it was all spinning in a certain direction, right? And that's why all the planets and the sun rotates too. Everything is rotating and orbiting in the same direction. And that's kind of interesting. Okay, so Earth's rotation causes the seasons to change. Why is that? Remember, there's two things going on. The Earth is tilted, right? And it's moving around the sun. So it's tilted like this. Well, sometimes that tilt means that the northern hemisphere, the northern part of the Earth, is sometimes pointed towards the sun, right? But as it orbits, sometimes the northern hemisphere is pointed away from the sun. So if you're closer to the sun, what happens? Of course, it's warmer. If you're away from the sun, of course, it's colder. And this happens, of course, for the northern and the southern hemisphere. That's why when it's December, right, that means that the Earth is tilted on its axis, north-south axis. The north part of the Earth is facing away from the sun. The southern part is closer to the sun. So in what did I say, December, January, in that time, we have winter in the northern hemisphere, but it's summer in the southern hemisphere. So when it's winter in New York, it is summer in Sydney, Australia. Okay, don't forget that. And then the opposite happens. When the Earth is rotating, the Earth is orbiting, it's also moving, the axis might turn so that now the northern hemisphere is closer to the sun, the southern hemisphere is further from the sun, so now it's summer in New York and winter in Sydney. And that is why we have the seasons. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, right? How the Earth, not only is it orbiting, but it's orbiting on an axis and it's also rotating, right? Now these things cause days, right? It causes daylight, 24 hours, right? Because of the rotation, but the seasons are caused because it's rotating on an axis, and as it moves, the direction of that axis is either towards the sun or away from the sun as it moves around the sun. Very interesting. Now, if you're very interested in this, by the way, you might consider being an astronomer. An astronomer is someone who studies these things. They study planets, they study the sun, they study the motions of what they call the heavenly bodies, right? Mars, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, and they find many interesting and strange things about the motion, and they find different worlds too. Did you know also, it's an interesting fact that the moon, right? The moon orbits the Earth, but the moon is rotating at the same rate as it's orbiting. So you always see the same part of the moon. You always see the same part of the moon is always facing the Earth. That's an interesting fact, right? You never see the other side of the moon. We only see one side of the moon. Interesting. Okay, but anyway, that may be another unit or another lesson. Okay, so anyway, this is why the Earth has seasons. Why do we have spring, summer, fall, and winter? That is the reason. It's because the motion, and it's tilting on an axis as it rotates and as it orbits the sun. Okay, very interesting. Next, now we can see the Earth's movement. When you look at a shadow on a sunny day, right? It's a sunny day, not any clouds in the sky. We can see the sun very easily, and the sun is shining light on the surface of the Earth. Now we look at a tree, right? And we see the tree, and we see the shadow under the tree. The shadow seems to move during the day, right? From the morning to the evening, the shadow will change its position. What's going on? Well, in the morning, the sun is low in the sky. Now, in this picture, right, if I'm looking at this picture this way, right, I have to imagine the sun is over here, and it's morning time, so the sun is to the east, the light is hitting the tree, and the shadow is to the west. The shadow is pointing out to the west. So the sun is low in the sky, shadows are long because the direction of the light is hitting the tree at an angle, right? And so that makes a long shadow. Shadows are long. We say shadows are long or shadows are short. How tall or how long is the shadow? How much distance does the shadow have, right? If it's a lot of distance, we say the shadow is long. But as the day progresses and the sun climbs higher, it's not climbing, the Earth is moving, but as the sun seems to move higher in the sky, that shadow becomes shorter, right? As the Earth rotates, shadows change length and position, right? So at noon, think about it, the Earth is turning, so at noon the sun seems to be directly over your head. So the shadow is at its smallest. It's right underneath the object that is blocking the light. So the sun is at its highest point in the sky. Shadows are the shortest. They occupy the smallest area because it's straight down. Now, the sun is moving, of course, to the west where it will set. And as it moves over to the west, now it's hitting the tree at the opposite angle. And so the shadow becomes long, and now it's stretching over to the east, right? Sun is in the west, hits the tree, and the shadow is created in the east, to the east of the tree. So the sun is low in the sky again, shadows grow longer. So this is also, you don't have to look at the sun, right? When you're out in the day, you're having a great day, you're out hiking, you're having a picnic, you're flying a kite, you kind of look at the shadows and say, oh, the shadows are getting long. It's getting time for dinner. I should start thinking about going back home, right? So that's a good thing to remember when you're outside on a sunny day. Just watch the shadows. If the shadows are short, yeah, you got lots of time left for sunlight. But as the shadows get longer and longer in the afternoon, yeah, it's getting time for dinner time. Mama's going to call me soon for dinner, okay? So keep that in mind when you're out in the sunshine. Okay, and those are our main ideas for this lesson. Next, we're going to take a look at the reading section. Okay, let's do the reading together. And as usual, read along with me, maybe silently in your mind or out loud to practice pronunciation. Let's start. Earth's axis is an imaginary line that goes through it. Earth rotates around its axis once in 24 hours. And that's why a day is 24 hours long. 24 hours long. Okay, good. Half of Earth always faces the sun. There, it is the day. There is light. The other half of the Earth does not face the sun. There, it is the night. There is darkness. Sunrise is when the sun first appears in the sky. It is the start of the day. Sunset is when the sun disappears from the sky. It is the start of night. The rotating Earth causes night and day. The Earth's axis is tilted. Part of Earth tilts towards the sun. It gets more sunlight and it is warmer than the other part. Earth orbits the sun in 1 year. The part of Earth that tilts toward the sun slowly changes. This is why the seasons change. Okay, very good. Let's take a look at how the information in this paragraph is organized. Here we have main ideas and details. The main idea, as we talked about before, the explanation of the sun moving around, the explanation of the Earth moving around the sun is what causes day, night, and seasons. So that's the main idea. We can see, first of all, how is day caused? That's the first detail that supports this main idea. So day, night, and seasons, how are day and how is night formed, okay? So first, Earth beep once in 24 hours. From the reading passage and from the vocabulary, we saw that the Earth will rotate on its axis. How long does it take to make one revolution? To go around one time, to start here, go around and come back to the same place? It takes 24 hours. It rotates once in 24 hours. Rotate. So that's one rotation. It rotates once in 24 hours. And rotate is the verb. Rotation is the noun. It takes one rotation to make 1 day. Okay. It rotates around an imaginary line called an axis. We talked about that before. Axis. And remember, the axis can be straight up and down, or it can be tilted, right? Beep is the start of night, right? So as the Earth rotates, it seems like the sun is going down, right? We call that sunset. Sunset. And beep is the start of the day. So when the sun seems to come up, seems to rise over the horizon, we call that sunrise. There's a very famous song going through my head. It's an old movie called Fiddler on the Roof. They were talking about sunrise, sunset. Okay, anyway, it's an old song. Okay, so sunrise is the start of the day. Sunset is the start of night. Okay, 24 hours. Now, I didn't explain before, it's kind of interesting, if this is the Earth, right? If you're at the equator, right, it doesn't really matter if the Earth is rotating at a tilt or straight up and down. It's usually 12 hours day, 12 hours night. But as you go further north, right, that changes a lot. Sometimes some people don't get, if you're way up here, you don't get any sun at all during the winter time when the earth is pointed away from the sun. And that, of course, also makes it a lot colder. No sunlight, no energy, it makes it colder. So that's another reason why you get winter. And we talked about that. So, how much sunlight and how much night depends on your latitude. Latitude is, how far north or south are you from the equator, right? Okay, so that's interesting. The further you go north, the less sunlight you have in the winter. Same in the south, southern direction. Southern direction. If you're further south, you have longer days in the winter, okay? And shorter days the further you go north. Okay, good. Okay, so Earth, beep, the sun. So we're in the first two sections, we're talking about, the rotation of the Earth, but don't forget the Earth is also making another movement. What do we call that movement? As it goes around the sun, it orbits the sun. So Earth orbits the sun. Now we're talking about seasons. So Earth orbits the sun. The part of the Earth that tilts, right? So we talked about this word tilt, and I just explained it too, right? This is the axis. So at this time, if the sun is over here, that would be huge, right? That's the sun. So right now, the Earth is, if it's rotating like this and the axis is like this part of the Earth, it's tilted towards the sun. But as it moves, as it rotates, the axis will change, right? Now, of course, that would be on the other side. The axis might be like this, and now the northern part is tilted away from the sun. They get less sunlight, the days are shorter, less energy from the sun, it gets colder, right? So, tilts towards the sun, the part of the Earth that tilts towards the sun slowly changes. That's why seasons change. So if you're tilted towards the sun, the northern hemisphere tilted towards the sun, it's summertime. Summertime here, wintertime in the southern part. If you're in the northern hemisphere, you're tilted away from the sun, then you have winter in the north, and the southern part is tilted towards the sun, they have summer. So tilt toward or tilt away from, right? So when we use tilt, we can say the northern hemisphere tilts toward the sun, or the northern hemisphere tilts away from the sun. This tells you which direction the axis is pointing. Is it towards something or is it away from something? Okay, so good. Well, this is all very interesting. If you're interested in this idea or the ideas of the planets and how they move and where they came from, again, astronomy is a very interesting subject. And I encourage you to read more about it. Read more about the Earth and the Moon and the different planets and the stars. It's all very fascinating, very interesting information that you can learn. Okay, well, that's it for this lesson. I hope that you learned a lot. It's kind of interesting information. I'm interested in it. I hope that you are too. And so I hope this was a useful lesson to you, and also that you learned a lot of vocabulary and a lot of interesting ideas about, why do we have day and night and why are there seasons? Okay, well, thanks for studying with me as always. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.